Hey guys, it is April from Getting Hogo with It. Today I am discussing books that I personally cannot stop recommending to people. Of course, now different people like to read different things, so I kind of recommend these books based on the vibes that I'm getting from people. So the first book that I recommend is for people who have a tendency to reach for thrillers or outright horror novels. If people like to get scared, then I always recommend to them Bird Box by Josh Malerman. This book follows Mallory and her two children. She is living in a world where she cannot go outside. There is something outside. You don't know whether it's a person or an animal or some sort of like mystical being. But the people who have gone outside and have seen this creature go completely mad. They kill themselves and sometimes they hurt other people as well. So she is living her life in this little house, but she knows that she has to leave it. Food is running out. There might be a community down the river that she would really like to get to with her kids. So she's raised her kids to live their lives blindfolded and completely blind, so they have really good sense of hearing. She takes her children, puts blindfolds on them, and then puts a blindfold over herself and goes to the river at the back of her house, gets in a boat, and starts to try to steer this boat in the hopes of getting to this community. Just the concept of not being able to see the thing that you're absolutely afraid of, even though that's like your first instinct. Like when I'm scared personally, I flick on like every single light in my house. So the idea of not being able to see the thing that you're afraid of scares the crap out of me. This book is beautifully written. It bounces back from the beginning of this epidemic when people are first starting to see this thing or whatever it is, to current day Mallory with these two kids. This is a wild ride. I cannot wait for more of Josh Malerman's books to come out. I think he's coming out with one in the spring, if I'm not mistaken, May. So I cannot wait. The next book I want to talk to you about is Homegoing. Now, I recommend Homegoing for people who are into really new releases, but they want really quality literary fiction too. Homegoing is just that. Homegoing follows the story of two sisters in Africa. One of them meets a white man in Africa, and the other one is sold into slavery and is shipped to America. Now, this story is really fascinating because every single chapter that you read, you're reading the next generation. So it goes from all the way from back to Africa during the slave trade, all the way to present day. And you meet all of these fascinating characters along the way. I really thought when I first went into this that I would get a little bit bored of some of the characters because we're meeting so many new characters. And I also thought that I would get really confused between the characters, but you don't. You fall in love with every single character. This author is absolutely fantastic. For people who are really into nonfiction, now this usually falls to guys, but a lot of girls love to read nonfiction too. I always recommend So You've Been Publicly Shamed. This book is by John Ronson, who also wrote The Psychopath Test. I haven't read that one yet, but I really want to. So You've Been Publicly Shamed kind of follows the concept of the angry mob and how public shaming was used in history and also in the present day, specifically with social media. This book was really eye-opening for me. Like, this made me rethink how I interact in social media. It shares examples of people who have done really stupid and kind of insensitive things on social media and then have been shamed like on a mass level. Like, they've written something on Twitter, pressed send, and then they have to quit their jobs or they lose their jobs and they stay at home and they become incredibly depressed. I really think that this is required reading for humanity in this digital age in particular. The next book that I frequently recommend to people is The Light Between Oceans. I think this is a great book for someone who's in a book club or someone who just wants a good cry. This follows two people who move to Genus Rock in Australia. He is a lightkeeper and she is a lightkeeper's wife. And it follows their story of infertility. She has multiple miscarriages. One day, a boat washes ashore, and inside this boat is a dead man and a living and breathing baby. They keep the baby, and there are multiple ramifications from that decision. This book is such a tearjerker for me. It speaks to my heart on so many levels. I also really find it interesting to have conversations with people after they've finished reading this book. A lot of people become very angry that they've kept the child, and a lot of other people can kind of understand it. I think this is a great book for learning about your own perceptions of things. Do you believe in a black and white circumstance, or are there more shades of gray? The next book I recommend is to people who are usually English lit grads like me and have, gone through all of the Jane Eyres, they've read a bunch of Jane Austen, they're done with Moby Dick, but they're missing some classics in their life. I recommend Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. It follows Janie, who at 16 is married off to an older man, and she has a couple of marriages that just don't work out. Janie moves to one of the first black towns in America, and there she meets Tea Cake, the love of her life. And Tea Cake's relationship with Janie is definitely drama-filled. It is heartfelt in some instances, it is passionate in others, and it can be downright abusive. This was my all-time favorite book for many years. Zora Neale Hurston was an absolute gem of an author, and sadly she literally disappeared. And I think it was Alice Walker who actually went on a mission to find Zora Neale Hurston's grave, and she finally found it. So there is an enormous chunk of her life that we have no idea what happened to her. And it's so sad because this woman was one of the best novelists, in my opinion, of the 20th century. So those are the books that I always recommend. What books do you guys like to recommend to people? And do you try to tailor your suggestions to people? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!